Mega Man, being such a long-running franchise, obviously has a lot of lost media connected to it. I've already covered the lost Rockman X prototype, but I think now's the time to cover the rest. Let's take a look at Mega Man Lost Media. But before we start, I want to give a thanks to this video's sponsor, you guys. Thanks for watching. I first want to start with probably the most well-known set of Mega Man Lost Media, a trilogy of sorts, and that's the infamous set of Mega Man games that were cancelled in the early 2010s. The first was Mega Man Universe. This game would have been a 2.5D platformer for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, where you could play as three characters: Mega Man, Rockman, and Bad Box Art Mega Man, and also potentially Ryu from Street Fighter. Yes, the game was going to be called Mega Man Universe worldwide, even in Japan, and the new Mega Man and old Rockman were different characters, but you could also customize these characters. The most notable feature of the game, however, was its stage editor. This probably would have been a big deal because this was way before even Mario Maker, as the game was set to be released in the spring of 2011. A lot of people don't like the art style of this game, and as an infamous art style critic myself, I'm inclined to agree. The next game was Mega Man Legends 3, the fourth game in the Mega Man Legends series that would have been released on the 3DS. This game would have had you play as two new characters, Arrow and Barrett, trying to save Volnut. Lastly, there's Maverick Hunter, which would have been a gritty reboot of the Mega Man X series that was a first-person shooter. You know, this era of gaming really needs to be talked about more. The whole westernization of Japanese games. You know, when they tried to make Bomberman and Sonic gritty, I think Capcom got hit with this the hardest. Actionizing Resident Evil, Dead Rising, the Bionic Commando reboot, DMC, using Western artists for Marvel vs. Capcom stuff, Dark Void, and Lost Planet. Anybody remember Lost Planet? I mean, as someone who grew up in this era of gaming, what a shitty era of gaming. I mean, there were exceptions, but they were few and far between. I mean, some of those games aren't even bad, and Maverick Hunter probably would have been fun too. Not to be a doomer, but I'd honestly argue that we're still kind of in it. To an extent, Activision, EA, Ubisoft, and Take-Two are more of household names now than Capcom, Namco, and Konami, and Nintendo just seems to be an outlier. Anyways, rant aside, while that whole westernization of Japanese games and the backlash to it was part of the reason these games were cancelled, and probably why Legends 3 was going to be trapped on the 3DS, it wasn't the big reason. The big reason was series producer Keiji Inafune leaving Capcom in 2010. He later went on to make Mighty No. 9, and we know how that turned out, so it paints him in kind of a negative light. No prototypes of these games have surfaced, and I doubt they ever will for a while, considering the era in which they were made. The only game I think people are still upset about being cancelled was Mega Man Legends 3. The fan games Mega Maker and Mega Man 8-Bit Deathmatch made the selling points of both Universe and Maverick Hunter obsolete, the former being a Mario Maker style game and the latter being a Mega Man FPS. Now that we're past that, I also quickly want to shout out a piece of found Mega Man media because I feel like people will scream at me in the comments if I don't at least mention it. In 1993, Capcom released the spin-off game Rockboard for the Famicom. It's basically a Mega Man 4 themed Monopoly game, which is weird considering it released after 5, but whatever. It's probably most infamous for not being released officially on the NES. A previously completely unheard of prototype of a cancelled Game Boy port of the game was discovered and dumped during the September 2020 Nintendo leak. I just think it's interesting how both a piece of lost media and its very existence can be discovered at the same time. Next, we have Rockman K-Tai, a series of Rockman-themed games for Capcom's K-Tai service of mobile games that ran from 2000 to 2014. with some running until 2015. In late 2023, Rockman Corner released some of the previously lost games, but some are still lost. I would go over a list of the lost games, but you can just read the Lost Media wiki list on it. 23 of the 36 games are still lost. Mega Man Anniversary Collection was released for the GameCube and PS2 in 2004 and the Xbox in 2005, and it was also scheduled to have a Game Boy Advance port. This port was originally titled Mega Man Mania before having its name changed to match the console version's name. But unlike the console version, which featured the first 8 games and some extras, the GBA version would have featured the 5 Game Boy titles. No prototype has been dumped of this version, and all that exists are screenshots that could just be mock-ups. It's been rumored that Capcom didn't have the source code for these games, which is why it was canceled, but this hasn't been confirmed nor debunked by a reliable source. In my opinion, it was probably canceled because you can already play all of those games on the GBA through backwards compatibility. However, it seemed like the versions of the games in this collection were going to remake them in color. And I don't just mean assigning different palettes to each of the 4 colors that the original Game Boy used. I mean that it looked like they straight up colorized every asset in the game to take full advantage of the GBA's color abilities. That is, of course, if we're assuming that these screenshots are real and not mock-ups. Lastly, I want to talk about a piece of lost media that recently entered the limelight. Ganbare Rockman Jishin Anzen to Kasai Anzen, or Do Your Best Rockman, Earthquake Safety and Fire Safety. It seems to be a short film that was screened around the time of the release of Rockman 5. It seems to be the first Mega Man cartoon that isn't a commercial. It wasn't released on home video or online since. However, in 2021, it was discovered that there was a children's activity book based on the film, but nothing inside was uncovered until Twitter user TurtleJump2 shared images of every page with Rockman Corner, showing that it included screenshots. It seems to tell the story of a boy who gets into storm-related emergencies, and Rockman and Rush give him some safety tips. This is the most info we have on the film itself. This is definitely one I'd like to see. Anyways, that's all for today. Hopefully this piqued your interest in these subjects. If you want more like this, check out my video on Mega Man X's Lost Prototype. Have a great day. By the way, I just want to apologize for the statement I made in my first Darkstalkers video, where I say that nothing new could be done with Mega Man. Obviously, a lot of people want a Mega Man Metroidvania, but I'm wondering where the co-op Mega Man game is. Seriously, 12 mainline games, 3 where you can play as multiple characters, and no one at Capcom even considered that idea?